Afternoon, Louise.
So it's my pleasure to introduce everyone to Tamar Dixon, another Midlands girl from
Wolverhampton, to be exact.
yeah, a fine city, a fine city.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about what Tamar's been doing under lockdown, which is podcasting. It seems like this wasn't just a response to COVID. You had all this stuff up your sleeve, but
That's
COVID
right.
gave you the chance to share something that you'd been doing for a while. So yeah, tell us about the joys of podcasting.
So, first of all, I am new to podcasting. I'm new to the podcasting world, and I have so much more to learn. I'm excited. And podcasting, so the idea came around podcasting was just over a year ago. Because I am so fond of learning about other people's stories and other people's journeys in dance. And for the past few years, I've just been like interviewing other people. Like for myself, it really wasn't something to get out there. And every time I'm learning about someone else in dance, whether they are a choreographer, whether they are a performing artist, or even if they're working behind the scenes, a manager, like I've always just been inspired by the wealth of what dance has to offer, and really just combating like the myths of dance. Like people think you're just dancing on stage, but there's so much more. So I was just like, wait, all of these recordings that I've got, all of these stories that I've picked up like along my travels as well, it really just encouraged me to just start a podcast series. I just thought, let's do this. And this was like about a year ago. And the name of my podcast that's out right now on Spotify and on my website is called Insights, an insight into your dance journey. So it basically is a platform vocalizing dance. It's exploring the different avenues of dance, telling real life stories, it's real talk. And it's also the trials and tribulations, but from the world's perspective. So it isn't all just local talk. And with the podcast Insights, it really looks at dance and culture, identity, and community. And the series that I've just released out this year in May is based in Jamaica. So it's even more specific. It's very Jamaican orientated about the Caribbean and dance, which is my background also. And this all came out of my trip last year. I went to Jamaica last summer. And this was a funded trip, by the way. I never went there intentionally to do podcasting or recording. I was actually there on a cultural exchange program with a company out there called Manifesto Jamaica. So I was really working in community arts engagement as well and coordinating. And when I was there, right on the soil of Jamaica, I was like, wow, everybody is just teaching me. I'm just learning every single day. And I felt a bit like in the UK, that story is not told. So that's when I decided to get my phone out, and I was just literally contacting some people that I already knew, and then all the people I didn't know, I was like, hey, help me reach out to these type of people in dance, the choreographers, the managers, even the students as well, because I like to get the young voices out there. So there's a broad variety of dance professionals and dance artists that I managed to get in contact with in Jamaica for this podcast series. And the benefit as well with it is that it's not just from Jamaicans in Jamaica. I actually managed to get in contact with those from America as well. And then when I came back home to the UK, I then reached out to a few UK-based dance artists and professionals with Jamaican backgrounds. I really wanted to just spread the word of the Jamaican diaspora of dance, culture, and identity. So that's a bit of the background story, the exciting side of it. But going forward, I will be bringing it back, a fresh series, but it won't be based on Jamaica. That was just series 1. And then series 2 and 3 will be on different topics too. But everything that I do is always coming from a place of just, it's kind of world's perspective and being resourceful as well, and really telling stories, real stories, to inspire others, to educate others too. So that's Insights in a nutshell. And the name Insights, I actually had that name since 2016, so that's not a brand new name. And again, that started off with me just experimenting with some of the creative ideas I have and working in community dance with young people. I started Insights on them and talking to them about, who do they want to aspire to, especially in like the dance and the arts world. So that name Insights I've had for quite a while, for some time. So it's just a breath of fresh air that, in 2020, that it's reached the level of a podcast, and I've had such fantastic feedback on it all. So yeah.
Lovely. Well, I'm hoping that some for some people dancing members will start to access it now, because it's not just for specialists, it's conversations, isn't it? It's usually you plus an artist talking about their journey, but I can thoroughly identify with that lack of information out there about artists from the Caribbean. For all of my working life, I've heard there's no access to information, how will I find out about the artists? And here you are bringing us something completely up to the minute. But I think the beauty, particularly for me as a busy artist, working mother, is you can listen to a podcast while you're doing other things.
That's
like
right.
Cooking, etc. I love to take it in, just like the radio. So I think it all sounds so fantastically immediate. It was an idea you had, you got your phone out, you were able to record, and it just seems to me a really wonderful reflection of what's best about the digital age. So over all these different podcasts that you've done now, particularly the Jamaican ones, what did you learn? Did you get an overall insight that you'd want to convey about that dance community, that culture as a whole?
Yes, so it really is. It's like bridging the gap, really. So especially with Caribbean dance and arts, it's very like unique in itself. So if anyone's interested in its culture, in dance or any other art form, you really have to go to the source to get that rich information. It's going straight to the countries and meeting the people who are practicing that, because it's all been passed down. And it's a lot of it in dance and anything to do with culture in the Caribbean is very much ancestral as well. So there's that side. But for me, what I've learned is it's the way the system is set up and the economy behind it really just hold back a lot of artists. And it made me realize that we really are privileged in Britain to have so much more resources. Sometimes we say, oh, there's not a lot of opportunities. There are many opportunities, but it's shown in so many different ways you may not see. So I think the privilege we have is resources and accessibility. And I do really feel like in the Caribbean, what I've learned that it is lacking, not to say that it's not there, but it almost is it's like the washing machine of doom. It's like feel like you can't really get out. I don't know how else to put it. So yeah, I learned a lot in terms of the economy and then the history as well as the Caribbean. That still plays a huge part in every corner. It manifests even in the arts and in business and education. So yeah, I learned a lot about that side.
Yeah. And that sounds like that makes second and third generation British Caribbean artists a very important link between the past and the future, the present and the future, or the UK and your own international links. It puts you in, I think, in a really unique position. So is that your own roots Jamaican? Is that what drew you to Jamaica in particular?
Kind of, yeah. I can't lie. So in a way, yes, it did. And it was just easier, to be honest, for me to just start there as a starting point. And then from there on, I can expand and just reach out to many different people, different artists from different cultural backgrounds as well, which I'm always open to. But I use Jamaica as my starting point, definitely.
Well, they do say our first community is ourself. And we have to start with yourself and your own identity. And it sounds like some of the podcasts came from the young people you work with asking questions. So did you find out anything that helped you to grow as a person, as an artist, from going back to that source, from going back to your roots?
So much. And it's so difficult to put into words. It's always something I really want to express myself and vocalize, but it's something that is a lived experience and it's a feeling. But I just say this generally to anybody. Going off the back of the podcast, and as it was, the first series is based like in Jamaica, you don't have to be into Jamaican culture or arts, but it is really important to really understand somebody else's background basically in the profession that you're into. So it's really, I really think it's really important to really to expand your wings and just reaching out to others outside. But on the other hand, it's for those who are artists of Jamaica or any other Caribbean background, it really is important to learn where you have come from anyway, because it really does solidify where you are today, and it really just made sense. Everything was coming back to me, coming back home. I was just like, okay, I can understand this is like this, why this is like that. And I'm so proud that I've got the podcast out there from the people to really explain how dance works overseas. But I can't give it all away. Just take a listen. There's like 11, I think there's about 11 episodes, 10 or 11 episodes. And every single one of them are different in its sense. So yeah, it's good.
Can you give us an idea of the different people, the different characters you met over there?
Yeah. So I had one. The first one was really based on like the female body. So anybody that's interested in women in dance, especially, and motherhood in dance. That was a really big topic of the first episode. I had other episodes that really touched on inner city communities. And inner city communities, also known as the ghetto, as they would say, is also known as deprived communities, and how they've tried to use dance as an outsource and outreach into those inner city communities. And it's very much different to the UK. I also had topics about dance education, like in higher education and further education in Jamaica, which I think my favourite one. It's most insightful. Other topics on the diaspora. So I spoke with about a few people from America, and then from the UK, and they were sharing their outlook on the Caribbean, being born and raised outside of their home country. So that one is a very, very topical debate all the time, because it's always something that's going to look at different angles. So yeah, and then I spoke to a few young people, and I think it was very important to get the young people's voices heard, because they are the future. They say it all the time, and their outlook, their experiences, what they have to say more than likely will manifest in years to come. So I got their experiences and their voice, and they were really talking about being a young person, a youth, and also in training, and what training is like for a young person in Jamaica. So yeah.
Sounds great. It sounds like very typical concerns of anybody anywhere in the world. So absolutely worth tapping into. And so yeah, like you were saying, so important to have that perspective. So you've done a lot of travelling. You are what I would call an establishing artist. You're 6 years from graduation. Is that
That's
right? From
right.
Wolverhampton.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, from university. And what, listening to your story, what 6 years it's been. And talking about young people, one of the other reasons, apart from letting people know about the podcast, that I was so keen to talk to you, was to talk to other people, obviously people who are graduating now. They're having a very different time, going on a different journey, but you took a very different and untypical journey, and really made the most of it, and it's led you to a really interesting place. And it's about those establishing years. You've already emerged, but on that journey you found yourself, literally, as we were just saying, also found out what you were doing, what you were interesting, and you really seemed to me like a really fine example of the courage to follow your instincts. And I think that's something that maybe young people graduating or moving through dance training now are probably going to need. So I wonder, would you take us back to the beginning of your story and tell us your story from training to Jamaica?
Oh wow! There's a lot has happened. I have to give you all in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
You don't want to bore
How did
people
you?
to death.
Yeah. How did you begin? Did you begin in a community setting for dance?
So how I got into dance, so it's actually through my aunt. It was my aunt that pushed me and got me into dance, because she was a dancer as well. So she took me along to her dance school in my local town, and I started off doing ballet, tap and Latin, which tends to be very typical. I really did enjoy it though. And I started from the age of 4, so I was very committed in those styles. And I say this to a lot of people, And it's something that I've recognized as well in dance, that when people first get into dance, what inspired you in the beginning tends to be from a family member or from the community, like a community setting, whether that's and like a dance school coming in outreach to a club or to school. So it tends to be one or the other. So in my circumstance, it was family. So yeah, my aunt got me into dance, very committed, in lots of exams and competitions, you name it, throughout school. And then when I left school, I was like, yeah, I want to dance again. There was nothing else. So then I went to college straight after school in Birmingham.
And you began to encounter different aspects of dance in college that you found inspiring. Were some of the people coming in, you talked about the importance of the outreach of people coming in from education. Was that when something began to shift in you towards the dance identity that you have now?
Definitely would say, like, in college, like, the brink between ending college and then going to university, like that transition stage really did open my eyes, and to see that dance, I can dance, I don't have to just dance on the stage, I can work in dance, I can still keep dance with me, but it doesn't have to just be on the stage. So that really that stayed with me in the core. And obviously having like local dance companies and national dance companies coming into college and university as well, and doing like outreach projects and programs, the opportunity to perform. And that was like the prime time for me, you know, in my not my early 20s, my late teens, I'll say my late teens, you know, and I was really inspired, and I was really just motivated, and all I could see was just dance. And people would say, is there anything else you would have done? I really don't know. Probably, yes, probably. But yeah, so that the outreach really did encourage me, and dance education, like from other colleges and from other companies who are really working with young people, is what kind of encouraged me and my peers as well during that time. And
The
even when I was,
styles,
go on,
oh
sorry.
sorry, the styles you were encountering then, was it more contemporary coming in, and had you already begun hip hop, or is that the time when
Yeah,
those
so
came along?
so I started contemporary late. Yeah, so contemporary came to me, yeah, when I was at college, towards the end of college. And even when I started it, I really wasn't into it at the time. It was just weird to me. It was just, we were on the floor, and it was just different, you know. And I do appreciate contemporary today. I continue that practice. And you know, hip hop styles also came introduced me around this a lot earlier, actually, a lot earlier, but I took it more seriously when I was in college. And I have family members who are, you know, really into like underground hip hop. And that's not just in performance, but all elements of hip hop styles. Anyway, so yeah, and I just kept that with me, kept it going. And this is something that I have picked up on now, and I hope other younger people who are listening, and young people who are practicing at the moment, that, you know, even if you're practicing dance, whether it's like a career or if it's just for a passion, it really keeps you grounded. And I just got a lot of discipline from dance, definitely. And what I mean by discipline, it's just little things like punctuality, you know, turn it to a class on time, and you're there prepared, ready in your uniform or whatever you dance in, and it's knowing, you know, right from wrong in a class. So I learned many other lessons that could be used outside of dance.
Yeah, we were comparing when Tamar and I were chatting to prepare this, about, we talked about the confidence it gave us as young women as well, just self-confidence, and just having that space to dance with other young girls. So you moved on from college to uni. That was a bit of a bumpier ride. How did you deal with the joys and challenges of a degree?
Oh, wow. I think I overworked myself. That's the first thing. I'm a very hard worker anyway. I'm one of those people that is, if you give me something to do and I love it and I want to get this work done, I will get the work done, but I just put far too much on my plate. And that was my biggest struggle at university, and a lesson learned, that it's okay to take a break. It's okay if you make mistakes and you get things wrong. Because at university, it was not like the work that we were doing was difficult itself. I was making it even more difficult, feeling like I needed to take everything that was coming my way. So yeah, but you know, I had a good time at university. I learned many lessons as well. And sorry, go on.
I was going to say, through college and through university, did you encounter any Caribbean dance styles that, you know, the ones that you've been illuminating through the podcast? Were they there?
No, they were not there. This is something that I learned, again, it was from family. It was from outside of education, actually. I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, I'm not impressed. We want it to be an education like it is today in some areas of the UK. However, at the same time, what I'm pleased is that I'm glad that I have already got that background from my family, and a lot of that was just storytelling. It's like oral history. Most of my family don't dance, but they would just talk about it. They would just be about it. So it's something that's carried. I've just carried it within me. But because, like, you know, in the UK, it's very much focused on British contemporary in the education system in dance, which I expect anyway. It is so heavy on that. But I felt at the time that that's the only route to take. I didn't really some days I used to feel like there's no need to look elsewhere because this is handed to me on a plate, and I can honestly put my hands up and say that I kind of just fell for it quite easily and tried to change myself and adapt to what was there rather than looking elsewhere, which we'll get into because obviously it came from my travels and getting to know other people after graduation. But so that was one side of thing. But again, with family and my own community outside of college and education and university, that I was already home in the UK. So, and at that age and that time, I just didn't know any better. I just didn't understand. But obviously, I've learned now. I'm understanding, of course. But yeah.
So it sounds like at the end of uni, that was the time to get out and look all around and about. And this is where the unconventional part of your journey begins, because you were saying that unlike almost everyone else in your class, you didn't want to go out straight out and have a performance career. You wanted to begin in your own community. And it sounds like also in some ways to make up for the things that you didn't have on your dance journey. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah. So you know, after graduation, after the dissertation, should I say, my mind was not fixed on getting a job. I really wasn't like, let's get a job, because I was just like, I need a break, number one, and secondly, surely there's so much more I can do. And I booked myself a trip to Thailand. Pretty much that was it. Thailand was fed to me again in like the student union about this working abroad, traveling abroad, and I just seen it one day and I was like, that's it. I really didn't think twice at the time, and I just did it. And then when I booked it, I was like, oh, what have I done? What have I got myself into? I did have these doubts, like, oh my gosh, but I just did it anyway. And that's, you know, my love for traveling has just grown ever since university. So yeah.
You got there, dance followed you there, or you automatically gravitated to dance the minute you arrived? Is that right?
Dance came with me. Dance just naturally just gravitated, because in Thailand, for example, I went there teaching English abroad, got the qualification. I also got teaching qualification as well on the side. And whether I found a different way of like teaching these Thai children, and I just started moving, not necessarily dancing like a whole choreography, and it just kind of naturally came out to express, you know, in the lesson plans that I had. And I was like, wait, what am I doing? Why don't I just do different movement styles and creative movement to these young children? And then it just stayed with me. You know, I think that's just something natural, especially if you've been for me from the age of 4. That's the only thing that I've really ever done outside of school was perform and dance and train. It's natural, and I think that goes for any other hobby someone has, because it was first just a hobby and then obviously now a career. So
And yeah, I would agree with that. Most children I make, they still speak movement it's, you know, it's one of it's their first language, and it carries on being really high in the mix. I used to think it stopped at about age 8, but the more I meet young people, I think it's still there, it's still there, it's still so important. And tell us about some more. So I take it Thailand led on to more travels, and there's about
Yeah.
4 or 5 significant places and programs that you've been on, aren't there?
Yeah. So after Thailand, I went to where was it? Italy. Italy was the next one.
Erasmus.
Like, yes, Erasmus Plus. That was also dance related. So I was hooked up with a choreographer from a province called Lanciano. I always try my best to pronounce this is right, different countries. So I did again, it was choreography and like community engagement as well. I did out in Italy, and it was part dance and part like coordination in the arts. It was still very artistic either way. That was fantastic. It was really great. And the mentor I had out there in Italy, she really like did her best to really immerse me in, like, you know, culture in Italy in terms of dance and the arts. So I got the chance to meet many other people and go around to different dance schools, and it was a lot of it was observation as well. Then the opportunity to teach with her as well. Then I did a dance to film project in this local beach. I've got that out on YouTube. But that was a really great trip to Italy. I went to many places. Cuba was one. Cuba, I did a few. The classes that I did out there were private though, so it was more or less like a private training, private learning. And this was for me again, it was to understanding the arts in the Caribbean. So Cuba was one trip. Senegal as well. How could I ever forget Senegal? Senegal, honestly, in a nutshell, was just such an spiritual awakening. I was there for about 2 weeks. I was crying on day 3, honestly, because I was that just immersed, that just so deep into it. And I learned a lot of the traditional forms and the modern dance forms too, not just Senegalese dancing, like West African dance forms. And then we had some dance training, like of the Caribbean dance forms as well, folklore, and a few styles that are involved within the hip hop genres too. So Senegal, going to Senegal really surprised me quite a bit. I would definitely go back there. And I think there's probably a few other countries. And if it wasn't for the lockdown, I'd be away right now. So yeah.
And you're gathering,
Repeat that again. Sorry.
it's gathering lots of spring.
Yeah. Sorry, you froze then.
And that's fantastic to have, just, you know, just after. So what after that? Oh, actually, I did want to check, especially for the young people watching, how did you support yourself to do these travels, or in between the travels, what were you doing? Because I take it must have cost some
Yeah.
money, although there was some scheme you applied for.
Yeah, so for many of them, I did apply for like funding, and this isn't funding from the Arts Council, like those project grants. It really wasn't that. Erasmus Plus is a really great resource. I recommend people to reach out to them, and like Prince's Trust as well are also good. So
That
a lot
may
of the fund. Sorry,
I,
go on.
I think Erasmus might be ending with the end of EU.
Yeah, and
Sadly,
that's
yes.
right. Yes, I should know
Yeah,
better. But yeah,
yeah.
so I made good use
Mm-hmm.
of Erasmus Plus. And again, at the time, it wasn't really like an intentional thing, like, oh, got to travel and money. Obviously, there's always going to be this feeling like, oh, can I afford it or not? Because I was so focused on just, you know, really creating an impact for myself and the people around me for the future, and using traveling, you know, as my career, should I say. I wasn't so caught up on the funds, but the funds really, again, part of it came from funding bodies, and the other half was that I was working as well, part-time. I've worked since I have left university throughout. I worked in like schools in education. You know, I think most dancers ever start off in retail. And I've also worked behind the scenes in dance for other dance companies and dance organizations. So I did that on the
So,
side as well, and I made sure I
even
stayed being strict.
yeah. So even in between, it sounds like your work, it was still working with children would feed those skills that you took abroad, and those skills come and feed back again. I bet that travel made you a more eligible employee.
It did actually, and all those travels, it's all on my CV, and I always, because I've got a blog as well on my website, I've always talked about it, my travels, and all on my online profile and social media, I put that out there too. And at the start of doing this again, it wasn't like this fixation on this, I've got to get a job, I'm going to get a job out of posting my trip to Italy. I mean, I'm doing it now because you realize the value out of it over time. But yeah, so like a few jobs that I've got, I've brought up my travels and what I've learned as well abroad, especially with the networking and the confidence building as well. So it isn't always those hard skills. It could be a personal thing too, and being open to learning languages in order to communicate as well with different people. So it has really worked and it's benefited me, I must say, in regards to employment.
So at the end of all those travels, is that the point at which you began Unique Moves, your own real life company? You don't just exist on the internet.
Yes, that's correct. So Unique Moves Dance Collective is a community-based dance company I founded in 2018. And yeah, it's totally different to the digital life and the traveling life. It's very local to the West Midlands. And with Unique Moves, I reach out to communities, like intersectional communities, young people and children when I go out into schools as well and deliver workshops. I've also done women-only empowerment workshops as well around Birmingham and Wolverhampton. So that's Unique Moves in a nutshell. The aim of that really is to engage, embrace and empower. And I always push those 3 E's, because everything about it really is engaging communities, no matter your age group. And that's really is very different to all the other work that I do. It's very different to the writing side of me. It's different to the interviews and the podcasts and working behind the scenes. So Unique Moves is very much community and being in front of the people.
As many other practitioners.
Thank you. I think you froze again. Yeah, just I heard a little bit. Yeah.
Again, have you continued online if community practitioners have done?
So I have continued along. So to be honest with you, I didn't start online like straight away like everybody else, because for many reasons. One, I really just took the opportunity to take a break, which I think is very important. So I didn't want to feel obliged or pressured to automatically offer dance classes online just because everybody else was. And I know that I've got a community out there who probably are waiting, and we're still in good contact, so I haven't left them hanging. But the lockdown and COVID-19 really taught me many lessons that I've realized that I am doing so many different things that are great things, but I need me time. So I have been taking a step back and I haven't been offering the classes online. But on the other hand, it's given me the opportunity to re-evaluate, to re-look at all the work that I'm doing as well and offering in a different way, and then re-entering the digital world from a different angle. So that's what I've been doing. But this month I actually started a fresh new, it's not exactly fully fresh, a new online workshop called the Self-Reflection Workshop for Creatives. And this one is it's aimed towards anyone, whether you're a dancer or not, but it really is aimed towards creatives, entrepreneurs, in any artistic discipline. And the self-reflection is basically what it says on the tin. It's very much self-help, confidence building, career building, but through an online workshop. And I actually started that last year, voluntary, just to like other dancers out there. So I thought I'd bring that back because it's a bit more smoothing for me to really build that rather than, you know, start the choreography from home and start teaching the dance. I will be bringing back the dance workshops. They are definitely still there. But I wanted to give myself that break first, with no apologies as well.
So last question, from where you are now, what would you say if you could have a word with Tamar as she was perhaps in that transition time, just out of college, just into uni, or at that time when you didn't quite know where it was going? What would you say to her looking back now?
Wow. So I think I would say to myself, you know, take it easy. I know everything I've said and announced that I'm doing all these random big bold things with big bold ideas. Well, let's just go to Thailand, you know, let's just start a company. And all these big ideas that I've had are really great, while at the same time it's too much at one time. And even during my transition stages, I was doing the same thing then. I'm just saying yes to everybody, and saying yes to everything, and it's okay to say no, because not every opportunity is for you at that time. Things will always come back to you, and that's something I believe. So that's something I'll note to myself, my 19-year-old self, and say, you know, just take it easy and always stay grounded, you know, always stay on your path, and just trust the path and the journey you're on, because everything you do, it really is a journey, and not to expect everything to just fall on your lap right in front of you. So, you know, quite a few things I'd say to my younger self.
Absolutely, and from much further down the line career-wise than you, I'd thoroughly agree with that. My journey's been quite a meandering one, but actually it does all fall into place. And especially if you're for dance and dance is for you, it will find you wherever you go. And eventually, as you're getting to this stage of your career now, things begin to crystallize, and all the threads come together. Who you were with your auntie dancing and the stories at home begin to come together with the learning from the education, begin to come together with your travels and your experiences, and the thing that's very unique to you. So you may have stopped being local, but COVID actually really allowed you to go global, it sounds.
Yes, definitely. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and to reflect back and stay still in a way that I think you have to keep moving through those first few years of career, but hopefully a real blessing to have a bit of a watershed. You sound very, very appreciative of everything that you've been through, high and low and up and down, because you had a period of injury too. It wasn't all plain sailing, was it?
No, it wasn't all plain sailing. That is actually a huge chunk out of my career, out of my journey, that I haven't actually touched on. And I do want to talk about that more, actually. But yeah, I went through a period where I suffered immensely from an injury that's now like a condition that I'm living from, because the injury was undealt with correctly at the time. And this is a many mistake many dancers make, is continuing to dance when you know you're not entirely well, and if you know you know your own body. So that's kind of a tiny mistake that I made, and bought a condition I'm living with, my ankle bones, and that turned out to be a major surgery I had, and I was in a cast boot 12 weeks. I was off work for a whole year. So even within that year, I was writing, by the way. I couldn't move, so I had to write.
So you didn't waste that time, did you?
No.
Tell us the skill you got from during that time.
So being more appreciative, that's definitely one skill, and I think that it just works in so many wonders. But with the writing, I used to just write about the injury itself, nothing pleasant, but it was very, very interesting, very insightful. So I got a few blogs as well about dance injuries and how it impacted my confidence, my self-belief. So those all the different impacts, and and it really was a turning point for me. I had to really ask myself, do I really want this? Where do I want to go? Like, what's happening? Like, so that injury really just turned the other corner for me. So dance never left me, but I've realized that if I want to continue performing on stage, I really need to take care of my body, but I also need to listen. And I was listening very hard, and it caused me a lot of physical pain, and I found myself complaining a lot. So instead I just thought, you know what, I'm going to pick up the other skills apart from the writing. You know, became like working behind the scenes, like in administration, which is something I've always been interested in anyway, and that I kept to the back of my mind. And I thought, you know what, let's bring it forward now. I've got to have to use those admin skills and the kind of management side of things and programming and all those other stuff, which is what I do now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and that's paying off now, and it surely must support Unique Moves. Those skills must support your community group.
And even with that, just anybody who's listening, whether you run your own company or you go to a company to do classes and stuff, that it does take a lot of hard work behind it, and many people have had so many trials and tribulations and so many journeys just to create this platform or create this brand that they have to offer. So, you know, with Unique Moves, despite me working out in the communities and teaching, you know, all people, I still have to use those other skills that I've got behind, and I always combine everything I do together to make life easier for me.
Yeah,
The writing, the admin, and the teaching side of things, is all combined anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like, you know, you sound like a natural born freelancer. Is what I would call somebody who's quite happy to put all the bits together for herself.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Tamar. I hope that people will go to the podcast and go to the blog. We'll put all the links for you there. And it sounds like even in 5 or 6 years, it just shows what a vast number of experiences you can accumulate if you just there's a bit of listening to yourself, listening to your instincts, trusting the journey, I think, and trusting yourself to work it out as you go, and that being absolutely okay, that you don't have to drive yourself into the ground. The wisdom will come to you if you sometimes sit still and listen.
Thank you. You've just said everything. You really are speaking my mind. But thank you as well for the time, and I'm just thankful that you're having me, so I get to just really get my experience out there and hopefully inspire others and really motivate others as well to keep moving, you know, but don't forget to stop if you need to, and then get up and go again. Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, and always express your unique self and have faith in that. I wish when I was 18, 19, I'd been able to watch a conversation like this. I think it would have saved a lot of heartache, put it that way. But thank you so much, Tamar, and I'm sure I will see you on the circuit.